Here's a very common complaint. I don't know, not a complaint, a question rather, about issues that Randy is having with his project, and that it's playback lagging issues. So let's describe this. As anybody that follows my channel will know that I've made a number of videos addressing this issue and solutions to how you can work within your existing hardware and video project and still get a satisfying outcome. So let's take a little bit closer look, and let's applaud Randy for doing a really good job of explaining the problem. And what I mean by really good job is that he has given us a screen recording of what he's doing, and from this we can tell a ton of information. And I will give some recommendations to other videos I've already made on the topic and just briefly describe how he can resolve the issues that he has right now. By giving us this screen recording, we get a full view of everything that's going on. We can tell from up here that Randy has a 22-minute project. It's not extremely heavy. We can tell from the one clip that he has selected, or the project, that he is dealing with a 4K videos, so it's very memory intensive for sure. And it's got a fairly fast frame rate, kind of standard for, I don't know, your phone or so forth. And on the timeline, we can see that there are many cuts. In other words, he's got probably hours of recording that he has taken, clips of what he wants to show, and built his project line. And we can also tell that he has not rendered the information on the timeline yet. We see this red line here that shows us that it's only done the initial load. And what I mean by that is most video editor programs will do kind of a lazy load before they do the full load. And in Filmora, that transition occurs when this line turns from red to their Filmora green, blue, whatever it is, cyan color here. So that's a lot of information. And later on in the video, he talks about the specifications of his hardware. Let's try to address all of these issues and see how we can put it together and make it work for him. The one great thing about Filmora is that while it's designed for the beginner and average user of video editors, it also has extremely powerful tools that can allow you to easily overcome the machine, even for the most robust computers. And I'm not trying to shame anybody for the type of equipment that they have. I'm just simply explaining a fact about Filmora. For one thing, for example, is that you can add up to 100 separate tracks in Filmora, and that in itself can just overwhelm any computer. Now, Randy goes through and explains for us what his specifications are. So let's take a look at this. His CPU is an AMD Ryzen 7730U. Okay, let's just use AI here. I'm using Microsoft Copilot, and let's look up the specifications for Randy's CPU. He says he's using the, okay. And what we can tell from he's working, it appears that he's probably working on a laptop. And the key things here is the number of cores and threads. It's a little bit on the light side. 2 gigahertz is also a little bit on the light side for video editing with a lot of memory, but it's adequate because it does have a boost speed of up to 4.5 gigahertz. So this L3 cache is the amount of cache that's set aside for like rapid processing, and he has 16 megabytes. It's okay, not a lot. We can see that it's an integrated GPU, and it's an RX, which is a ray tracing type GPU, but it's integrated into the CPU. I generally don't like these, but perhaps this is because it's a laptop. But it goes up to 2000 megahertz, so that's 2 gigahertz. This is going to become his real limiting factor in his project. And the other limiting factor is the use of these DDR4. We would like to see DDR5 or 6 on the GPU. Now this is probably within the CPU, and mind you, this is an integrated combination of a GPU CPU. So that's what he's using here, and it's capable, but not for huge tasks. And we'll explore that a little bit later. And then he finally finishes up with saying that he has 40 gigabytes of RAM or memory. This is memory on the motherboard. So what we don't know about the 2 gigahertz graphics card is we don't know how much memory is dedicated on the graphics card itself. Because that it's integrated with the CPU, they probably share memory there. And again, that's probably not the best option for video editing when you have heavy duty material. But we're going to discuss workarounds when you're using 4K videos and you have many clips in there of how you can improve your workflow. But before we do that, let's take a look at how you can look at your own specifications real quickly. Randy talks about the fact that he is running Windows, and that he can use or he can take a look at the task manager. Now the keystrokes there are Control Alt Delete, and I'll do that. I'm going to have to take a screenshot because it does actually not show up in the video recordings here. Okay, so this is what it comes. There's a blank screen that comes up, and then you can click on the word Task Manager on the list that comes up, which probably did not show up here as I did that. But you want to go down to the second menu item, which is Performance, and here you have a full list of all of your equipment. And when we were talking about the CPU and the GPU, they're going to be listed separately here. However, the CPU, when you click on something, you can then see the specifications down here. And the L3 cache is really what you want to focus on for the CPU. That's what's used for quick access. And what I mean by quick access, things that need to be done right away are stored here. And things that are used within the execution of the program is within here. Now, Randy talks about his 40 gigabytes of RAM here. That's fantastic. Some of it is going to be taken up by other programs running in the background, such as Windows and whatnot. So not necessarily all of it is available. But the main thing in here is the number of threads. I'm not going to get into details about these things. But the GPU for the modern Filmora is very important. As we were talking about, is the ray tracing. And indeed, even Randy's AMD, which uses the RX notation, indicates that he has ray tracing. And that's particularly important for video encoding and decoding, the 3D here. And again, they don't generally put a lot of this memory into computers. I have a very robust computer, but even so, I can max out at 100% usage very easily when I'm doing video editing in the ray tracing area, because not everything in the GPU is dedicated to ray tracing. And really, this is the key for the no lagging and whatever. This is the modern technology. And so there is a limited amount of that, and you can, through AI, you can see exactly how much your particular equipment has, or your GPU has available. But you'll often see that this is at 100%, and it's only using a fraction of the dedicated memory. The dedicated memory is actually located on the GPU itself. It's not shared with the CPU, and so therefore this is more quickly available for doing the rendering that you need to do while you're editing and also while you're exporting, which are two different processes. But anyway, this is how you can review, and then you can actually run this in the background. You can change the setting to always leave it on top, and that way when you're processing or whatever, you can see how your machine is maxing out. Let's just get out of that. And again, this is just how you can view what you have in your computer, what kind of equipment you have, when it's maxing out, and so forth. Each one of these comes into play during certain aspects of the editing process. But just to summarize what's happening for Randy and why it's lagging is that when a computer runs out of a specific type of memory, it starts writing to the next quickest location. If it can't put it into the memory in the CPU or the GPU, then it goes into RAM, and when it can't finish up the RAM, then it starts writing to disk. And anytime it starts writing to disk, and it doesn't matter whether you have an HD drive, hard drive that spins, or you have an SSD, which is a solid state drive that is quicker than the other, it's going to be slower than using the memory, and the memory is going to be slower than using the memory on the CPU or the memory on the GPU. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to see lagging when you're getting writing to the hard drive, or when memory just reaches maximum in a particular area. So, okay, enough about that. Let's get into solutions for Randy's issue. If you log into my channel, you will see that I have playlists. And I do have one playlist that focuses mainly on computers and the lack of power on things that you can do. So this is a resource I would recommend that you go to. You take a look at that. Let's see if we can see the videos here. Currently I just have 14 videos, and Randy's will end up in this category as well when I post it. But there is, in particularly, if you wish to figure out why your computer is going slowly, there is the demystifying, lagging, crashing, and other weird effects. This is a 30-minute video, and if you're not interested in all of that, but basically I compare two different computers with 4 different setups of GPUs and CPUs and so forth, and the effect of it on rendering or exporting a project into different types. And it can vary between having something being done in a few minutes versus something taking up an hour and a half for exactly the same project. And that comes at the end of this video, so if you don't want to see the other stuff, you can see it in here. But in here I do describe what each of the different components is used for in your computer. And there is also I have another one on comparing the difference between preview render files and proxy files. We were talking briefly about the render files. Anyway, there's a number of resources in here. If you're interested, you can go into this playlist and you can look through the different stuff. And what I'm going to be repeating in this video, or what I'm going to be covering in this video, much of it has already been covered in the videos that I have already posted. So the first step that Randy can do in resolving his problems is recognizing what the limitations of his equipment is. And What I mean by that is if you know you're going to be working on a project that has a lot of video, and also if it has a lot of tracks, you might want to just start out right away segmenting your project so that you're not trying to do the whole thing. Once you export a particular segment that has multiple tracks or even has a lot of media in it, you will end up with a single track of both audio and video, which can more easily be rendered and exported in the future. And so if you cut up your project into a series of smaller segments, export them, and then start a new project and combine them, you will not get this lagging. The less you have on the timeline in the way of memory, the faster it will run. Okay, that would be step number 1. Step 2 for Randy would be to use the instant cutter tool when he's bringing in the information that he wants to use. We know that every one of these clips that he has on the timeline has been shrunk down. In other words, he has taken just the part that he wants to use to make his very effective video, and he's made these cuts right here in the timeline because that's the way the video editor, after all, works. But it's not good if you have, if you're running out of memory and you're experiencing lagging. So how can you get around that? And you can do that by using the Instant Cutter tool. When you import your data, rather than just dragging everything in and dropping it in here in the resource panel, go to the import section, and instead of doing it from here or here, go down to this part here where it has import with the Instant Cutter tool. Now I have in the playlist that I just showed you a video that demonstrates how you can use the Instant Cutter tool. But let's talk about the importance of using this tool. When you use the Instant Cutter tool, you get a lossless method of importing your data that you're going to use. Since memory is of the utmost importance for a completion of the project, instead of cutting it here on the timeline, because when you cut it on the timeline, you're not erasing it from memory. You know yourself that you can have a project, you can make your cuts to your videos, you can save your project, you can close Filmora, you can come back the next day, and if you decide, oh no, wait a minute, I want to stretch this out, you can take that very cut piece of video and you can stretch it out to its full length. You can only do that because it's sitting in the computer's memory, and therefore importing something that you're not going to use is just slowing down the rest of your project. So using the Instant Cutter tool, you will make a series of lossless cuts. In other words, by using the Instant Cutter tool, you will not lose any quality of your original media. You will retain your original full clip, but you will have individual cuts, one or more clips from within the video of just the material you're going to use. So right away, this is going to be your biggest saver in a project. You will be able to do much more. Most likely, Randy would be able to do this 22-minute video as a single strip if he only brought in the cuts he was going to use. It's a very easy tool to use. Take a look at my video on how to use that. For the next step, you really should take a look at how or what the default settings are. Filmora now does an extremely good job of testing your environment, testing your equipment to see what works best for you and making those selections for you. In the past, it didn't do that, but now it does. But you go to File, you go to Preferences, and you go to Performance. And here is a GPU check. And if your GPU has the ray tracing capability, it will be selected. If it doesn't have the ray tracing capabilities, it will not be selected. And if you think that you can just enable hardware acceleration, even though you don't have the capability, you're actually making your selection worse. And again, my video on demystifying at the very end shows you what happens when you try to accelerate on a system that does not have a ray tracing GPU. And likewise, if you do have a ray tracing GPU and it's not activated, you want to have it activated. On this particular feature, you want to make sure that any changes you make the changes, you apply them, you exit Filmora and restart, because this does not take place until you restart Filmora. Now, the next thing is this preview render. We talked about Randy not having that red line across there. One thing that will help smoother playback is if you allow the videos to actually render. Now, the fact that Randy has 4K videos, which I'm sure he didn't chop up before, chop up, I mean use the Instant Cutter tool to import them into his project, means that there is a lot of rendering that needs to go on in the background. So you may want to allow the rendering to occur before you actually start editing with on your project. And they have set it up now. It used to run all the time and it really caused excess lagging, but now they will only start rendering if you don't move the mouse around or you're not doing anything else. So just let your computer sit and let it render. Okay, but even better than this background rendering is use of proxy files. Proxy files are used in place of the original files. That doesn't mean that what you export is going to be a proxy file, but you're going to lower the resolution. We know that Randy's working with 4K videos. And if he didn't use a proxy file, that is a file at a lower resolution than his files are up at this level of resolution, if he chose one of these lower resolutions for his editing purposes. In other words, the videos are clear enough that he can see what he needs to see, but only this lower resolution is loaded into memory for editing purposes. The editing process is going to be smoother and it's going to work better. So absolutely use proxy files. And I'll talk a little bit more about how to manage proxy files in a second here, but let's just finish up here. So proxy files, you make the changes in your editing, and then when you go to export, whatever you have in the proxy files will be applied to your export files, to your original media. And here's a setting where you can lower your still images and so forth to a lower pixel size. So this is extremely important as well. So take advantage of the proxy files. And let's talk about just one other aspect of proxy files, which I alluded to, and that is in the media cache. You have this setting for proxy files. You can clear them out when you're done with developing your project. You can also delete them immediately as you close the project. I don't recommend activating this setting because if you're going to take several days to work on your project, every time you close the project, or rather every time you restart the project, you have to sit and wait for these proxy files to be recreated, and that can be time consuming. So it's better if you know that you have this limitation and you need to use the proxy files after you're done with the project and you don't need the proxy files anymore. Go into Preferences, Media Cache, and hit the clear button, and then you will be all set. So that's the way to handle proxy files. I did have a video describing the difference between the use of the proxy files and the use of the rendering. Let's just flip back to Randy's view here. Okay, as I said, his videos are not rendered here. This slows down or creates part of the lagging. So it's two separate processes. The proxy files, when you use proxy files and you import some media, you will see that it renders right here, right away. Or it rather renders, it doesn't render, it creates this lower resolution file that you will put down on the timeline. Okay, You can do this post-processing. Randy could go in here and just apply proxy files. He could open up his project and he would see a little circle. First would be gray, and then eventually it will turn that blue color for each one of them as they're rendered. Anyway, use the proxy files. When you have limitations, this will definitely speed up. So these tips that we've covered so far will solve all of Randy's problems right here if he just uses them. Randy posted a follow-up question when I told him I was working on this video for him of how he could deal with the problems that he was experiencing within Filmora. And what he explained was that when he exported it, he got a blank screen at a certain point. Maybe the sound wasn't matching up with what was being showed in the video. And it's really the same issue that he was experiencing during the editing, in that the computer could not execute as fast as the program was executing. In fact, he was lucky that his computer didn't crash. So that being said, I mentioned before that I have here in the channel, and I'll list the link to this playlist that I have within my channel, which I call Lack of Compute or Lack of Computing Power. And I'll list this link in the description to this video. But for Randy, and I did give him a copy of how to can't export my project, and I believe I have another one, how to salvage a project that won't export. These are a couple of videos where I explain to users they're in the middle of a project and they put a lot of time and effort into it. How can they export it without losing all the work that they've done? And there is a way to salvage your project. So go into this playlist here. There may be of other items of interest to you see in here. How to use the screen recorder like Randy's doing. It's a good way to present your question. And anyway, just to recap what I told Randy was, I guess I didn't actually tell him, I just told him to watch this video. But there are ways to cut your existing project into segments and export those segments, and then restore the previous full project and delete the other half. And once you've exported the segments into their own little files, you start a new project, you combine all the segments again. It doesn't matter that you cut right in the middle of a video. When you stitch them back together again in a new project, it will be seamless. You won't even see the cut. And to see exactly the steps to do that, how to salvage a project that won't export and can't export my project, these are the ways to do that. If you were to crash in the middle of a project and you're like, oh my gosh, I put 20 hours into this thing and now the darn thing crashed and I lost the whole project, there is a way to salvage your project, because the default setting in Filmora is to make a backup file. Unbeknownst to you, a backup file is created every 5 minutes that you have the project open. It's not an actual full backup. What it is a link to what your status was at that time in the project. So most likely you can go back and you can then restore your backup file. I'm not sure that I have it in this part of the in this playlist or not, but you can always use the search up in the channel to search for recovering they might be this one, multiple ways to recover a broken from a broken project. Yeah, it might be in here, but I do have a video that shows how you can restore a project that crashed on you from just a few minutes before it actually crashed on you. And so then you can call it back up, and you don't need to despair that you've lost everything. It's there. Anyway, these are the tips. This is an extremely long video, and I hope you stuck with it to the end.